And does it include other elements of possible high strangeness that have shown to be correlated?
Yeah, we're looking at what, we're interpreting, I guess, what Congress kind of defines as UAP for the most part. And so we are looking at objects that are anomalous. And to your point, you know, like a Bigfoot, or let's say someone who feels they've had some sort of personal experience. That's not the sort of stuff we're looking for. Hope, you know, maybe at one point someone will start to record that sort of stuff, but we're kind of focused right now on the issues that Congress and the Pentagon are mostly concerned with. Yes, sir.
This may be a little outside of the focus of your organization, but I'm just curious about something you may know about, which is for people who believe that these phenomena are actual craft and that they are extraterrestrial craft from some far distant world. The big problem that they have, of course, is the physics of how they could have possibly gotten here. What theories or explanations do they offer for how they presume these craft could possibly have gotten here?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and that's a little beyond me just in that, although I work with a scientific organization, I mostly work on, I'm not a scientist myself, I'm a science writer, but all of us science writers are a little limited in our understanding of it, so we have to rely on the experts. But point being that, you know, here's an example. I asked Michio Kaku a similar question, and he said, you know, what do astronomers know? But his point being that, you know, in the theoretical physics arena, there are ideas that would allow for such things. And so his point also being that there are the idea of unknown unknowns, that, you know, there's a lot we don't know yet. So it could be something completely unknown to us that we just haven't discovered yet. So, so they allow for those possibilities. And one thing a lot of them feel is, you know, following the data, if we find it and the data shows it's there, then we've got to discover how it got here. But then again, for Patrick and Abby Loeb in their last paper, also demonstrated there's a way that this could be happening with our known physics. So in other words, a mothership that's been traveling here for many, many, many years that finally gets here and drops some probes and then starts to gather data.
So that's the multi-generational
theory. Right. That sort of thing. And you know, Kevin Canute, the scientist out of SUNY, has written a really interesting paper too, where he talks about even with our technology, we would be able to create kind of an armada that flies at very fast speeds. And if we were able to calculate it right, we would be able to visit different planets. Time would be different. So in other words, you know, they would be, when they came back to Earth, we would be much years and years older. But an interesting aspect of that paper is that to him it also explains why it wouldn't be advantageous to communicate with whoever you were visiting. Because if you came one day, you know, to visit the planet, and then came back the next day, to you a day went by, to them maybe 1,000 years went by. So why talk to them when next time you visit them, no one who's there is going to be there. So that's kind of an interesting idea too. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a few things. As far as national security goes, I don't really think that's too much of a problem. These pilots, they claim they're afraid. Well, if you've noticed throughout all the reports that we've witnessed and everybody's seen on television, these things are very maneuverable and obviously under perfect control. So, because of the nearness that they do approach aircraft, civilian and military. So I don't think there's much to worry about that aspect because it's obvious they have perfect control of what's going on, much more than we do.
Right.
They say there's no evidence of the propulsion, which actually there is if you look at what they use to detect this craft, which is your FLIR, which detects heat. Now, the image that's displayed, all the heat things are dark and the cold things are light. Well, if you notice that craft is surrounded by a cold area, that should tell you something right there. That maybe there's some kind of folded space going on there, or warping of time-space continuum type thing. It may be a little far-fetched, but why? So is what's going on now.
Yeah, No, I think you're making some great points.
Yeah, and also, I mean, he was officially a debunker for the Air Force. He was that guy there, so he didn't see a damn thing, you know what you're talking about. But he saw so much evidence that it was just overwhelming that this can't be true. These people are covering these things up. The military does a lot more than they say to them. They got to trust us because we're the ones just giving them the damn information. So what the hell's so classified about it? We gave it to them.
I think that there are 3 different points you make. One is the threat aspect. You've got a great point.
What are we gonna do?
I know. Let me address that for
Nothing.
you.
We can do nothing.
That thus far, like the cases that I've exemplified, they speed off at a very quick speed and nobody gets hurt. So you've got a great point. In fact, the Chilean government, a group called CEPA, which is an official UAP organization that's existed for quite some time, they brought their government heads together to talk about potential motives, and they determined they're benign, that they don't pose a danger.
Well,
The only danger is distraction, so they've decided to educate their pilots that you may see this, but don't worry. On the second point with the FLIR and the observations there, it's known physics. So you're right, those FLIR may be able to give us clues as to what's happening, but we don't understand what's happening. So physics as we know it, or science we know it, we still can't explain what propulsion may be being there, but maybe the data in the FLIR will help us understand it.
Yes,
So that's a good point. But the third point, when that data, the data we need, like the FLIR data and other, is classified data. That's coming from classified systems.
Well, I mean,
so that's
I could buy a FLIR off the Sears and Roebuck shelf right now.
But your
So
point
I
on
don't-
this is that
The only thing top secret about that was the information displayed. The picture itself, no. But the information that, you know.
But and that's what we're talking about, is that as citizens and as people interested in this topic, we can utilize that sort of technology ourselves to start to capture data that is open and free to the public. And even the sighting reports are also open and free to the public.
And we're not as fragile as the government thinks that we are.
Yeah, agreed.
We already know. And if you take the collective mind, it's more correct than the individual mind in any given day.
Well, you'll notice that Avi Loeb has said with Harvard that he's not relying on government information. They're going to use their own technology.
That's the only, that's always going to happen because I don't know what they're keeping from us, stuff that we gave them. How are they keeping stuff from us that we gave them?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and you know, and the like
I don't
we
think
talk about
they're
over
giving
DC and stuff, that's always planned. We knew that was going to happen to begin with. We already knew that to begin with because the people that told us, if you don't get rid of these nuclear things, I'd love to sit down and talk to you. I know we don't have a lot of time.
No, but you're making a lot of
I
great,
love to talk to people that have so much to say.
Yeah.
So many questions from a professional I've been dying to talk to.
Yeah.
I can talk to these guys here all day long, you know, and I get the same old story, but there's somebody in your experience.
But yeah, but I think that's what we're talking about, is we can gather that data ourselves and we don't need to wait. We can begin to start to understand this and grab that telemetry ourselves. So we agree with that point. I think that's one of the points I was trying to make. So thank you. And we should try to wrap up. It's starting to get late. Go ahead.
So are there follow-up investigations? And if not, how are you going to filter out things like Starlink or like SpaceX launches?
Yeah, so we do have filters. So one of the things that we're developing when we have filters on are where those are. First of all, they're pretty obvious in pictures, a train of lights. Otherwise, ultimately though, it'll come down to the researchers. So in other words, we can give you a data set of cases to look into, and then the researchers need to do further digging and look into what was in the area at that time. Although we are developing, and we've got under development this app will you can push a button and it'll show you exactly where the satellites and the aircraft were at the time of your sighting, so you can match it up. So yeah, we're working on those aspects as well. All right, then we can wrap this up. Feel free to get any more leftover pizza